Hello and welcome to another edition of Hughes of the World. I'm the Hughes and this is the world. Well, today's just China because we've got up to episode 36 and the 36th country in the alphabet is China. Well, 36th member of the UN. Things like that are going to get a little bit complicated as we go through the alphabet, but so far it's been fairly straightforward. First of all, I want to just say sorry for starting a stream and then it just stopping weirdly. So there might be some people still watching that stream thinking that the show's going to start in a minute, which is probably why I should have music on while I'm some kind of hold music. So I had to faff around sorting that out. And then I tried to bring my notes up on my screen and they had disappeared from my Google Docs. So that was a bit of a panic. So I found them. Don't worry, they were saved under one of my different email addresses, not my normal email address, the other email address that I sometimes use because I was accessing someone else's email, Google Doc the other day, and they wanted they used my other email address, so I had to log in with that. Look, no one cares. And then, just as I'm about to sort of get going, I think actually I've got some video to show you, and if I play it on my laptop here, you're gonna hear the sound through the mic. So I need to go and get my headphones, which are in my coat upstairs. But I'm here now, and that's all that matters. Sorry that took so long. I'm really just embarrassing trying to get all this stuff ready to do a show about China. Or as Donald Trump says, China. With his little tiny hands. Going China. Okay, so who's here? We've got Vegan Elite. Welcome to Hughes of the World. We've got Pineapple Boy. What's happening? We've got Duke Vengeance saying, Swire, I need more sanity regulator. Yes. Lee Corn saying evening. And Vegan Elite saying yes, music. Evening, Lee, Pineapple, and Duke. We did, I think, have Jeremy and David Faulkner. They were watching the other stream, so hopefully they're with us. If you're here with us, Jeremy, can you hear me? I hope you've crossed to this stream because the other one had to be abandoned because it was I don't know. It just stopped. I don't know why I did it. I must have tapped it. Must have just tapped on stop streaming for some strange reason. Okay. Here we go. Alex Green. Yo, Alex, how you doing? Today we're talking about China. This is a huge topic. I don't know how I'm going to get through all this in an hour. This is going to be insane. Okay, so I may as well just crack on and just see how far I can get. Okay, China is not just one of the biggest countries in the world, the most populous country in the world. It's also got a massive load of history, like history stretching back to thousands of years BC. And also, I've got loads of footage of me in China. I've got footage of me in Beijing, in Xi'an, in Guangzhou, in Qingdao, in Tibet, in Hong Kong, in Macau. Like, I've traveled all over China, and I've got hours of footage. I'm going to show you a little bit of what I've got after the show, if you want to stick around for that. But one day I'll put it all together in a very watchable video format, so you can just sit there and watch my adventures in China. But I've travelled quite a lot, extensively around China, and experienced quite a lot of it actually. But still, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. It being such a vast country. So, what do you want to know? The Chinese invented silk. They invented the crossbow and the compass and paper money. And gunpowder, and printing as well. More people speak English in China than speak English in England. The red symbolises happiness in China. The number 4 is considered very unlucky because it sounds a bit like the word for death in Chinese, in Mandarin, I guess. And the number 8 is considered lucky. So you could go to someone, and they'll go, oh, that's unlucky. And you go, no, it's lucky. See? There's 8 of them. Ping pong is China's national sport. And the capital is Beijing, formerly Peking, which is a Romanized version of the name. It's always been Beijing for the Chinese. The flag, bing. The red on this one doesn't symbolize blood necessarily. It represents communism. And the big star is the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, which we will be hearing loads during this live cast because it's dominated the history of China for the last 70, 80 years. Almost 100 years. Bloody hell, yeah. Let's say 90. Let's say 90 years. The 4 stars that you can see surrounding, sort of sticking out from the central star, they represent the different classes, apparently, of people in China. And the original design for the flag, fact fans, used to have a hammer and sickle inside the big star. They got rid of that. They were like, oh no, we've already got a hammer and sickle on the Soviet flag. We don't need that as well. It's a bit over-egging the pudding. Anyway, so yes, the population of China, as I said, biggest country in the world, in terms of population, is 1.41 billion. Although it is about to be overtaken by India, possibly in the next couple of years. There's a couple of reasons for this. One of them is in 1980, they instigated a one-child policy in China, which seemed to be a way. I'm not going to say clever, because it wasn't. It seemed to be a way of managing the population. It's a lazy way. It's a stupid way. It's like there's a way of controlling population sizes. And it's this. You educate women. That's it. And give people freedom. Give people freedom. That's it. Freedom and education. And you'll see your fertility go down. So you're not everyone is having 10 freaking children every generation. And your population is not exploding exponentially. Now, since they brought in that one-child policy, China's population has gone from 1 billion to 1.4 billion. So they've added another 400 million people since 1980 on what they had. So I don't know if it's been a success. And also, you've got this whole group of people, tens of thousands of Chinese men, maybe even hundreds of thousands, who they're called like bachelor syndrome or something. That basically, because of selective abortion, yes, that's a thing and it really exists. Basically, they say, oh, what sex, what gender is this child? They say, oh, it's got to be a girl. And they're like, oh, I'm going to have an abortion then. No, this actually seriously freaking happens, which is, depressing in many ways. Anyway, so yes, who else have I got here? I've got David Faulkner. He's made it. Thank you, David. I'm sorry I put you on that wrong stream there. Welcome now. There we go. Right. So where was I? Oh yeah, the population is 92% Han Chinese. So that means 8% are from ethnic minorities, but that's still 125 million people, over twice the population of England, living in China. It's such a vast country. Even 1% of the population doing something. If you're one in a million, you think you're really special because you're one in a million. Well, in China, there's 1,400 of you. And in every family, of every 5 people, not family, of every 5 people in the world, 1 is Chinese, and 1 is Indian. The other 3 are other people. David Faulkner, good evening. And Duke Vengeance says good evening. A lot has changed since I was in China. I got there by boat from Macau, says Chubai. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool, but that's not a big distance though. It's like there. But yeah, before 1999, Macau was a Portuguese territory. And now it's Chinese. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the culture in China. Oh, what I was going to do actually, I'm going to show you. I'm going to pull out one of the notes from under my table. There you go. That's what's this called? A renminbi. That's a Chinese banknote there. That's 1 yuan. And I think there's 10 of them in a renminbi. A bit of a weird system, but there you go. Yes, so moving on, the culture. Okay, so first thing I want to say about China is the food is freaking incredible. And if someone doesn't agree with me on that one, I might have to have a fight with them. But the flip side of the food being absolutely incredible, they seem to be like, okay, so Charles Darwin, Charlie D, the inventor of evolution. Nothing evolved until Charlie Darwin went on the HMS Beagle and discovered evolution. It's a bit like Isaac Newton. The gravity didn't exist till an apple fell on his head. So anyway, he discovered evolution. Okay, he worked out the natural selection and sexual selection of the species. Yeah, one of the things he used to do as a I don't think they called themselves scientists back then. He was called like a natural historian or something. He used to eat so when he'll find an animal, right, he'll go, oh, this is really fascinating, and he'll do a little sketch of them, and he'll measure them, he'll weigh them, he'll see how many centimeters long the beaks were or whatever, it was a bird, and then he'll eat the fucker. This was just something he did. He just wanted to, and he would actually put in his notes what it tasted like. I would like to institute this as a national thing, or an international thing maybe. Every year on February the 12th, which is Darwin's birthday, and also the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, but that's another story. Every year on February the 12th, I think you should try something new. Try eating something that you've never eaten before on Darwin Day. I think this is a great idea, but I've not had a. If we get like some great scientist or biologist to back me on this, it might become a thing. But it's a bit close to Valentine's Day. That's the only problem. And you can imagine that you eat something that you've never eaten before, and your partner's very happy about it, and you have a terrible Valentine's Day as a result. But moving back on to China. China's a bit the same. Okay, so. Nothing's off the menu in China. Nothing is off the menu. And once when I was traveling on an overnight bus from Guangzhou to Hong Kong, I stopped at a place where they were selling food. All the menu was in Chinese. Well, it would have been in Cantonese there where I was, in Canton. And I just pointed at something on the menu. It looked fine to me. Started eating it. It was a big pile of rice, fried rice, okay? And it had meat in it, and I'm eating it, and I discovered that this meat tastes absolutely foul. Whatever this meat is, it's just not good. So I start scraping away the meat and just trying to eat the rice, because it's the middle of the night, I'm dead hungry, I haven't had any dinner, I've been on this coach for 8 hours, I'm trying to eat this. Anyway, so as I'm eating it, I noticed something like in the middle of it. You know, like maybe you'll find a chicken leg in your curry if you're having a chicken curry in India. And I'm like, oh, what's this? So I start digging in, and it's a dog's paw in my rice that I was eating. And I nudged the guy next to me, who spoke a little bit of English. I said, is this dog? And he's like, and I went, woof, woof. And he went, yeah, dog, woof, woof, yeah. Is it good? And I'm like, no, it's not. Oh my God. Even if, look, all things being equal, if it had tasted amazing, I'd have to sit here and say, well, I kind of get why they like this whole dog thing. But honestly, it tasted like solidified fart. Okay, not shit, a solidified fart. Slightly different. Anyway, I managed to hold it in all the way till I got to Hong Kong. And as soon as I got off the bus, I ran in the bus station to the toilet. I had this big freak out because I didn't have any Hong Kong money. I only had Chinese money. I was like trying to got in there, toilet seat up, and just bathed my guts up. It is that bad. It is really that bad. I wouldn't recommend it. I would not recommend this. Okay, who else is here? Loud and clear. Jeremy's here. Thank you for joining us, Jeremy. The Chinese also use cooking oil from the sewers and resell it to street food vendors. Bloody hell, burglatory. That's something about China. If you ever go there, for some reason, the way they do their drains in a lot of the cities and stuff, if you have a hot day, when you're walking around, it smells of drains. I've noticed that a lot in a lot of different little towns and places in China. That's kind of, possibly nothing to do with anything, but I guess you take them off at the smooth. And the thing is with China is it's changed so much in the last 100 years, almost beyond recognition, and then even in the last 20 years, it's gone bananas. So yeah. So it's the home of great food, bad medicine, because people have Chinese herbal medicine, which seems to always consist of an endangered species that's been ground up to give you an erection. Listen, boys, just stick with Viagra, okay? I've been led to believe it works, all right? Just get that or one of the things off the shelf that's a bit like it, all right? You don't need powdered rhino horn, okay? It's only hair. That's all it is. It's just the same material substance as hair. You're eating up ground up hair, okay? I think is it the black rhino is now extinct? The northern black rhino, is it? It is extinct, functionally extinct in Africa. Kind of depressing. But yeah, bad medicine, but good kung fu. Starting with Bruce Lee, who sort of populated it. made it popular in the late 60s and early 70s with movies like Enter the Dragon, and carried on by people like Jackie Chan, Kung Fu style, and also a lot of the movies that we know of that come from China, generally made in Guangzhou, Hong Kong, Canton, where we get Cantonese from. So people speak Cantonese there. And I just want to talk a little bit about the languages. There's two main languages: Mandarin, which is the most spoken language, and then Cantonese, which is spoken like in Hong Kong, Macau, and Guangzhou, which used to be called Canton. Although these languages are completely different when spoken, they're actually the same when written. They use the same words. They just pronounce them differently. It's kind of weird, but yeah. If you're from Hong Kong and you only speak Cantonese and you want to speak to someone who only speaks Mandarin, you can actually communicate by writing it down. So there you go. Anyway, nation of workaholics. They all work bloody 12-hour days. It's insane, and that's led to it becoming the number one exporting country in the world. This is country, more stuff is made in China than most of the countries in the world put together. The political system, I like to call it an authoritarian socio-capitalist system, which basically means you can't vote on who leads the country, but there is quite a surprising amount of local autonomy. I'll just talk about this for a moment. You don't really know this about China usually because you just look at it and go, oh my God, with Xi Jinping in power, he looks like Winnie the Pooh. He hates people saying he looks like Winnie the Pooh, but it's okay because YouTube's banned in China, so no one's watching this in China unless they're very naughty and they're watching it with a VPN. Hello. I was taught Thai boxing by a guy who was in Enter the Dragon, says Lee Korn. That's pretty cool, man. You can get a bat from a wet market, I hear, says Pineapple Boy. Yes. You probably shouldn't. It's probably a bad thing. But yeah, at a local level, people have a lot more sort of autonomy. They get to vote some places, not everywhere, but they get to not only vote for their local officials, but also they're allowed to go on strike if things aren't going their way. In factories or in where they're working, the government's a lot more tolerant of that than they actually are in the UK, where it's a lot harder to strike. Yeah, I know, weird. Not what you expect, but it's the way it is. But yeah, the current situation in China is pretty not great, especially if you're a Uyghur living in the very northwest of the country, and especially if you're a Hong Konger who likes democracy. Yeah, then you're in trouble as well. So anyway, let's jump into the geography of the nation. And you know China. You all know China. Come on, this is China. Good old China. Everyone recognizes China. And basically, I'm just gonna zoom in here, and you'll see there's China there. Now, China is the third or fourth biggest country in the world, depending on how you measure it, after Russia, Canada, and possibly America. It borders North Korea, Mongolia over here, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan over here. Oh, God, you can't even see that. Afghanistan over here, Pakistan. It has a border with Pakistan. India down here, Nepal over here, and Bhutan over here. Also, it borders Myanmar or Burma, and it borders Laos, and it borders Vietnam down here. I've come over the border from Vietnam. I've gone over the border from China into Laos. I've taken a boat over to Taiwan, which we'll talk a lot about later, I think, and back again. So I've been in and out of China to Taiwan. I've been in and out of China to North Korea. Oh my God, to South Korea, and then back again. And I've also stepped over the border into Mongolia as well. So across that border, and finally, I'm one of the few hardy souls who has actually crossed the border from Nepal into this area here. This is Tibet. This is a Tibetan plateau up here. And if I zoom in a little bit here, this is Xinjiang over here. This is where the Uyghurs are. So when you hear about the Uyghurs in the news, they're there, and they're very close to the borders with Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan and Afghanistan. And that's why there's Muslims living there. That didn't make much sense in the first place. The weird thing is, that China, there's a few things that are weird about China. So if you can see the pointer there, right? If I just draw, see that the green bit here, and then you've got the dry bit here that's not so green. That line there kind of goes diagonally. 95% of the population live in this bit. They live in this bit to the right, to the east. Hardly any of the population live here because it's pretty inhospitable, all things being considered. However, China, although it's massive, and should probably cover about 5 time zones, it only covers 1, and everything is set from Beijing time, and Beijing is over here. If you can see that, Beijing is the capital. So that's over to the east of the country, and that should possibly be in time zone 4, and then there'll be another time zone along here, maybe time zone 5. Anyway, but no, it's not splits into time zones. All of China is in 1 time zone. So if you cross over the border from, I don't know, Kyrgyzstan or something, Tajikistan or Afghanistan, you'll be you'll be losing 5 hours, which is kind of crazy. So if it's, yeah, that's really nuts. And it means also that the people who live in this area here, sort of the Tibetan area, they find themselves out of sync with the rest of the world somewhat, in that when they get up in the morning, because they're 5 hours earlier, they tend to find it's dark at 10 o'clock in the morning, even in summer. Yeah, so what else do you need to know? Spratly Islands. Oh, I was going to say how to get in and out. If you're going to China, right, the Laos border's pretty easy. The Vietnam border's pretty easy. You can get into Hong Kong, and which is over here, and Macau, which is just next to it over here. You can also get into Mongolia pretty easily. This border with Nepal's a pain in the arse. The border with India, forget about it. The border with Pakistan, I've never tried it, but a lot of goods and stuff comes through Pakistan and actually from China when they're trying to get stuff across to Africa. So they actually use the port in Karachi, I think, over here, and bring stuff over to Africa when that's what they want to do. But yeah, so they're the easy ones to get in and out of. Bhutan, forget it. The border's it's non-existent. Burma, forget it. India, forget it. Afghanistan, now you can actually do this. You see this little panhandle here. It's really hard to see on this stupid Google Maps. But this little panhandle here, this is, maybe I can, no, I was thinking I could just get rid of the terrain. So you just see, no, that's made it even worse. Anyway, so you can see this little bit of, if you squint, you can see this little bit of Afghanistan. And that was actually, because I should have spoken about this when we did the Afghanistan video, but basically this was the Russian Federation up here, or the Russian Empire up here in the 1800s, and down here was the British Empire, and they wanted a buffer zone between the two, which Afghanistan presented itself as a buffer zone, but the British wanted this bit, and the British didn't want their borders touching the Russians and vice versa, so they put in this little corridor here, so the two territories didn't have to touch each other. A bit like, you know, when you get on a bus and someone presses their leg against you and you kind of move your leg away. If you notice, all the borders around here, especially in Jammu and Kashmir, are all dotted. See, they're all dotted lines. Yeah, the reason they're dotted is because there's lots and lots of border disputes going on between China and nearly all of its neighbours, actually, which is great. But yeah, so China just, yeah. And then if we head down into the South China Sea, oh dear, you should be able to see down here the Spratly Islands. Zoom in. So the text is really small. Can I make that text a bit bigger, please? There you go. Spratly Islands. There's the Spratly Islands, which are named after a British guy, I think, or maybe an American. I don't know. Some guy called Spratly. Anyway, the Spratly Islands are, as you can see, very close to the Philippines. They're also quite close to Brunei and also Malaysia down here. And they're also quite close to Vietnam. And they are going to be close to Hainan, which is part of Hainan, Island, which up here, which is it's the Hawaii. It's the Hawaii of, what's happened there? It's the Hawaii of China, but this is a Chinese island. And basically everyone has a claim over these islands here. And it's 5 different countries have a claim over it. So it's all a bit of a nightmare, to say the least. Okay, so I'll just get rid of the map now because I don't want to bore you century to death. And we've got, like, I don't know, just about 6,000 years worth of history to get through. You're a glutton for punishment. I just want to say as well, China is also the world's largest network of high-speed rail. No fewer than 37,900 kilometers of it has been built since 2008. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, since 2008, they have built more high-speed rail than I think the rest of the world put together, which is very impressive. We can't even build, 30 miles of high-speed rail in the UK because we're crap at stuff. But there you go. Is it keratin? Yes, that's what rhino horn is made of. It's made of keratin. Is it? Is that right? Is that the hair? It's hair. It's not nail. It's not nail. It's hair. Different. Yeah. He was in Enter the Dragon and he kicked Bruce Lee's ass. Just checked. He wasn't in Enter the Dragon. He was taught by the same teacher as Bruce Lee was in The Man with the Golden Gun. Stop people voting for their leaders. Squire, write that down. Top of the world, says Pineapple Boy. Yes, it's coming. It's coming. I've actually had a discussion this week with some people who might be able to help me make it a reality. So I'm trucking along with it. But first things first, let's do this. Let's dive in to the history of China. Oh, Christ. Where to start? Okay. Peking Man, as he was known, because Beijing, the capital, used to be called Peking. There was a series of fossils, not just one, but a series of fossils of up to 40 individuals of Homo erectus, which were found in the 1920s and 30s. Unfortunately, they were lost during the war, so we can't carbon date them because that technology only came out fairly recently. But they were believed to be between 230,000 and half a million years old. China is often touted as the oldest continuous civilization on the planet, but its borders have changed radically. Every decade of the time it's existed, it has changed a lot. It's got bigger, it's got smaller, it's broken into bits, it's got back together again, it's broken into bits again, it's got bigger, it's got smaller. But yes, this is why there's so many border disputes with its neighbors, because it's like, China, it's the people who want to be Chinese, I guess. Don't know if the Tibetans want to be Chinese, but I don't know if it's up to them, unfortunately. Anyway, moving on. So, about 4000 BC, dynastic rule in China began with the Qing Dynasty, spelled Xia. They set up early settlements in modern-day Shanxi. The capital of which is Qian, which is where you can find the terracotta warriors. So Shanxi is in the middle. No, it's not the middle. It's in the north, central northwest. I'll say central northwest of China, and also this early settlements were found in Henan as well, which is to the east of Shanxi. Around 1,000 years later, so let's just jump forward a millennium, why not? In 3000 BC, the Emperor Fuji, who was half man, half dragon, not half man, half biscuit. He was half man, half dragon. He was, He ushered in the legendary period of the 3 emperors and 5 sovereigns. This was a time of mythology meeting history, kind of like in the same way that the Trojan Wars are written about in the Western canon. It didn't really the gods didn't really interfere. Some things didn't really exist. Cyclopses didn't exist, but there might have been some bits of actual historical truth in them, especially when it comes to Troy, which it did actually get destroyed over and over again 8 times, I think. So moving on, in 1700 BC, we are still in BC. The Shang Dynasty was established, and this began its early writing system of China, which still exists to this day. Now, Chinese letters are actually pictograms. They started as little pictures of what they were trying to say. Okay, so for the symbol for an administrator or something might be a stick man holding a ruler against a tree, and that is made into Chinese letters, right? So that's an example. I don't know if that's true, but that's kind of, if you think about the symbol for exit, it does actually look like a pair of saloon doors. Okay, so they've actually drawn like this. This is what it looks like, and you'll find a lot of Chinese characters always come in sets of two. Not always, but generally you get two syllables to a lot of the words and a lot of the places. So Fuzhou, Guangzhou, Beijing, Shanghai. So you just have two syllables, and they're two different symbols that you put together to make the name of the place. Fascinating stuff. And in the olden days, they looked a lot more like pictures, and then they became more stylized over the years. And now you have two different forms of written Chinese, which is you've got Chinese traditional, and then you've got Chinese simplified, which does exactly what it says on the tin. Phonetically, Wo Ai Ni means I love you in Mandarin. Oh, that's nice. Ni Mada is rather offensive. Oh dear. I hope I haven't offended anyone from China tonight. I'll try not to. Anyway, the Shang Dynasty was also known for its elaborate bronzeware, which is seen in museums around the world, but especially in China, I guess. And that existed until about 1100 BC, so 1,100 years before the birth of Christ. And that was the beginning of the Zhou Dynasty. Which ruled until about 221 BC, but not really. It was a feudal system where warlords pledged fealty to the king, but it kind of fell apart in about 771 BC when the warlords crowned themselves kings, and they called this the period of the period of spring and autumn. And to Westerners, you go, well, what the hell? Why would you call that period spring and autumn? But I think it's because it was the period of change. So it makes sense, because things change in spring and they change in autumn. That's what I think, anyway. Anyway, in 604 BC, Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, was born, and in 551 BC, Confucius, Master Kong, was born. And I actually called up James O'Brien the other week, actually, because someone had answered the question about the longest family tree, and they had said erroneously that the longest family tree that exists is the Japanese royal families, which goes back to about 500 AD. And I rang up to smart arse over here and said, well, actually, no, it's Confucius, because that goes back to 500 BC. And all of his issue have been catalogued, and their descendants have been catalogued. And all their names are on massive, big, long scrolls, which exist in, I think, Beijing, where they're all kept. And they survived the Cultural Revolution, which is remarkable. Not a lot did. Okay, so moving on. In about 475 BC, China entered the Warring States period, fighting for control of all of China. Rival kings would build walls along the borders of their kingdoms, and these walls weren't like the Great Wall of China just yet. They're more like compacted earth mounds. And and in 221 BC, a guy called Qin, 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 he won the prize. He was the Highlander of China in the BCs, and basically he unified all of China, and he named it after himself, and that's why we call China China. It's named after Emperor Qin, the first emperor. He lived by the sword. He didn't die by the sword. I'll come to that in a moment. But he did indeed live by the sword. And Confucius's ideals of peace and tolerance went out the window. He burned books. He slaughtered his enemies. He was utterly ruthless. However, he did start the Great Wall of China in a very rudimentary version to what we know today, which is the walls actually. Oh, it's behind me. That's both sides. You can see it there. But it was what he did was he got the earth mounds that had been already built by the different kings of the states in the Warring States period, and he connected them together. And he went, look, I've got a big wall around my kingdom now. And that's what he did. Well, no, empire, I guess, because he was the emperor. He was the first emperor. He standardized the script that the Chinese use for their lettering, which, as I've said, is what's used today in traditional Cantonese and Mandarin. And also, he brought in a single currency called the euro. No, he didn't. But China was the first place in the world to have paper money, fascinatingly enough. But I don't know if this was paper at this time. But he did bring in a single currency for the whole of China. Burning books is mean before the invention of the printing press, says Pineapple. Yes. You know, if you're spending all that time doing all the letters and the illumination on each page, you know, very beautiful calligraphy. Yeah. Anyway, David says the characters have been simplified for use in China, but we still use the traditional ones in Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. Well, that's interesting. Thank you, David. I know there's 2 different versions. The character for exit is, and yeah, David's done the characters for exit there. I don't think that looks particularly like has it come up on here properly? Yeah, it has. It has. I don't know if that comes up as a gate properly on my, from what I'm seeing, but I'm sure there was one. It looked like two P's facing each other, so maybe a P and a Q, but they were squared away. Anyway, moving on. 207 BC. Look, I'm in the BC still, and I've only got 14 minutes left to finish this, so I'm not going to get finished tonight, am I? May as well just sit back and enjoy ourselves. 207 BC, Qin wanted immortality. He pursued immortality and got witch doctors and magicians and potion makers and snake oil salesmen and you know the types. The type of people who would drink sheep dip formula to get rid of the coronavirus, even though that's for worms in sheep. But, you know, whatever, you know, people are a bit like that. Anyway, so he took a load of potions to try and make himself live forever. He wanted to live forever. He wanted immortality. And do you know what? One of the potions killed him. Let that be a lesson to you. Anyway, so he was buried in a secret place that no one knew about for bloody centuries, for absolute bloody centuries. I don't think the Terracotta Army was found until like the 1970s, which might come a bit of a shock. It seems like something that's we've always known about. No, it was found very recently in the whole scheme of things. But he was buried with thousands of these terracotta warriors. And if you ever get a chance to see these in real life, they're amazing, and everyone is different. Everyone has different clothing and a different face. Everyone's got its own unique look to it. It's not just carbon copies. It's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. And he just buried them, and they were to guard his tomb in the afterlife. Anyway, so after a little civil war, the Han state was victorious because his son was supposed to take over, but he was a puppet ruler, and basically there was a war. And the Han Dynasty was victorious. Well, it wasn't a dynasty at that point. The Han were victorious, and thus began the Han Dynasty, which lasted from about 200 BC to about 200 AD. It's an easy way to remember that. And they're the ones who invented paper, so we couldn't have had paper money until the last guy. But yeah, they did invent paper, which was really, really cool. Anyway, moving on. In 107 BC, what's now China? Well, what was China, Proto-China, expanded into what is now Central China. And it conquered kingdoms to the southeast and what's now Vietnam. Oh, not all of that, but a lot of that area. Also, the conquest of the Tarim Basin led to contact with merchants from the west for them, east for us, the Middle East. But obviously it's west because they're more east. Yeah, people from the Middle East and that led to the establishment of the Silk Road. Yes, very good. Which was an amazing and an important part of not just the history of capitalism, no, but also an important part of world history. And the sort of stops along the way on the Silk Road, places like Samarkand in Uzbekistan are still UNESCO World they are UNESCO World Heritage Sites today because they're still magnificent. What was built, even though a lot of it did get destroyed time and time again by marauding invaders and things. But we're coming on to that in a moment. Anyway, so the Han Dynasty was seen, the 400 years they were in charge, was seen as a golden age of art, literature, and science, as well as Buddhism, which became a big thing around that time. In 23 AD, a usurper called Wang Mang took over, and his rule only lasted for 13 years. He was a radical. He was a reformer. He wanted, get this, he wanted to reform all the land and give everyone an equal amount of land. Yeah, everyone. China had commies back in 23 AD when Julius Caesar was thinking about, I don't know, invading Britain. Yeah, stick that in your opium pipe. Anyway, so he was knocked off though, but this meant that you can split the time of the Han Dynasty into the Western Han and the Eastern Han, because the capital moved between when the usurper was in charge, when Wang Mang took over and when he was deposed, the two separate things. And it's about halfway. It's about 200 years before and then 200 years after that it lasted for. But then in 222 AD, the Han kingdom or empire split into three rival kingdoms. It was united again in 265 AD under the Jin, but they lost the north though to what they called the 16 kingdoms. But that became the northern dynasties and the southern dynasties in 420 AD or 420 AD. I bet bloody commies. I bet he wanted UBI as well, says Lee Korn. Indeed. Chubai says a Taiwanese friend of mine said she couldn't understand someone from China. She said that they were speaking Chinese. Yeah. A wise man said, "Oi, get off my lawn, you totter." Indeed. Anyway, so moving swiftly on. 581 AD, we got the Sui Dynasty, and in 618 AD, we got the Tang Dynasty, which expanded the empire. It took out the Go-Turks, that's what they're called. Go-Turks, go! The Go-Turks in the north, and the Koreans in Goryeo, which is now Korea. They totally dominated Southeast Asia and led to another golden age of relative peace and prosperity. But some people just want to watch the world burn. And China collapsed into warring regions again around 906 AD. Anyway, so in the following years, you kind of got the Liao dynasty up in the north, who were the kind of like nomadic people close to Mongolia, what's now Mongolia. And in the south, you had the Song dynasty. And as they vied for supremacy, the Mongols in the northwest were growing in strength. And by 1206 AD, Genghis comes on the scene. And he was Genghis Khan. And he was recognized as the supreme ruler of the Mongols. The shit was well and truly about to hit the fan. His grandson, Kublai Khan, who decreed that a stately pleasure dome be built, finally defeated the last holdouts, the Southern Song, in 1279 AD. And Kublai Khan, declared himself the emperor of the new dynasty, which he called the Yuan Dynasty. The Juan Dynasty, the Juan Dynasty ruled the country for about a little less than about 100 years, about 90 years. Look, the Mongols were great at conquering stuff. Their empire stretched from today's Ukraine to today's Vietnam. I mean, seriously, it was insane. It was the biggest land empire that has ever existed. They were great at conquering stuff, not so good at governing and actually doing the boring stuff of actually ruling. They didn't really go for that. And also, there was a lot of inflation, which was a thing back then, still is today, and also earthquakes, which are still a thing today, which led to people rising up in revolt. And it's very hard if you're from another place and you come to somewhere to conquer and you don't really look like the people who live in this place that you're at. You can see how xenophobia and racism and just saying to people, hey, I want someone who looks like me in charge of my country, if you don't mind. Which sounds a bit racist when you say it in Britain, but when someone says it in, I don't know, Sierra Leone, you kind of think, well, yeah, I can see that. Anyway, moving on. So in 1368, the Ming Dynasty, famous for its vases, took over. It was founded by a guy called Zhuan Zhang. Hope I'm saying that right. Who was an orphan and a rebel leader. So don't stop dreaming, people. Do not stop dreaming. One day you might be the Emperor of China too. The 1400s were a pretty crazy time for China. We had the Emperor Yongle, great name, building the Forbidden City where the Emperor lived, which if normal people went into the Forbidden City, they would be sentenced to death. You'd be sentenced to death even looking in it when the gates were open. That was constructed from 1406 to about 1420. In 1439, there was an invasion by the Mongols, which led to the kidnapping of the then emperor. And it led to the Great Wall being lengthened by 600 miles. Keep them out. In 1557, the Macau was established by the Portuguese. And in 1644, there was an invasion from Manchuria. The Manchu invasion. It was taking advantage of internal strife. This is the story that happens again and again in Chinese history. The Chinese state comes together, everyone works together, and then they start falling apart. They start warring, and people get angry about who's going to be taken over. And then eventually, while they're at the weakest, someone on their borders, whether it be the Manchurians, whether it be the Mongols, whether it be the Japanese, they'll jump in and say, oh yeah, I'm going to have a bit of this. And that happened. And so the Qing Dynasty was founded. The Ming and then the Qing. Qing is spelled Q-I-N-G. And they ruled from 1644 to 1911. And they were the last dynasty. And they were ethnically Manchurian. And that created some problems because they wanted people in Han China, if you want to call it that, to dress like them. They wanted them to adopt the Manchurian way of, so a Manchurian look to it. You'll be familiar with those sort of racist cartoons of people from China where they've got the front of the head shaved and then they've got the very long plaited bit of hair down at the back. That was a Manchurian style. That wasn't necessarily the Han Chinese style. So people didn't like it. Women were told to wear these dresses that they didn't want to wear because they're like, that's not my traditional dress. I don't dress like that. And and things moved on. Look, in 1751, Tibet became a Chinese colony, effectively, and Xinjiang in the northwest was placed under special administrative control, given a lot of autonomy, which is still I'm going to say it still has today. It used to. It doesn't really anymore. It's an absolute shit show up there at the moment. The Qing Dynasty, what can I say? They weren't great. You know, they were not great with money, for starters, and they were very protectionist. Now, look, I think there's two sort of very extremes at either end of this. You've got protectionist regimes like North Korea, which really screw over their own people, and they don't want to deal with anyone else in the world. Go away, rest of the world. We're going to pretend that you don't exist. So you've got North Korea and Brexit Britain over there, and then you've got the other far end of the spectrum, which is like Victorian Britain, where it's like, let's get involved in absolutely everywhere. Let's go to every country in the world and invade, take over and steal things. That's basically China. Kind of never really, until very recently, expanded outside of any terrain that it couldn't get to on foot. As a result, during the Qing Dynasty, they had a habit of being, so let's say refuseniks. That's a bad way of putting it. Look, it was up to them. It was their country. They could run it however they wanted. But the only port that really functioned in the whole country that you could actually trade from if you were not from China was Canton or Guangzhou, which is near Hong Kong. And so that reduced the amount of trade that China could do with the rest of the world. And also, the Qing Dynasty decided, for whatever reason, that it only would accept silver for tea. And there was this huge demand for tea in the late 1700s, throughout the 1800s in the UK. There was this massive demand for freaking tea. Everyone wanted tea. Tea was the bee's knees, or Maybe the bees tease. Sorry, that was a terrible joke. I wouldn't do that again. So the British merchant ships went over and went, can we buy some tea off you? And the Chinese authorities said, yes, that'll be 7 pieces of silver, please. And they went, what? Silver? And they're like, yes, silver. We need silver to be paid. And they're like, we've got gold. We don't want gold. We want silver. Oh, we've got this other stuff. We've got money. I don't want money. We want silver. So the British came up with an ingenious solution to this problem with the help of the Portuguese. And the ingenious solution to this problem was that the English would sell them stuff and get silver for what they sell to the Chinese, and then use that silver to buy tea. However, the commodity the British chose to sell to China, to flood into China, was none other than our friendly opium. Our friendly poppy derivative, opium. And it led to an absolute catastrophic... It had a catastrophic effect on the Chinese community, on the Chinese society, because people were just getting off their heads on opium, and opium makes you sleepy, and people were sleeping all day and just spending all their time in their opium dens. And quite rightly, the authorities in China were pissed off about this. They're like, hey, Britain, dickheads, how about you stop forcing all this bloody opium on us? This is a pandemic of opium. What is wrong with you? Why would you do this? And the British, being absolute massive dicks, told the Chinese, if you don't like it, you can stick it up your arse. We're going to keep selling this stuff to you. It got to such a point that in 1839, an official in Guangzhou seized 20,000 chests of opium. Yeah, big old chests, big old Victorian chests. I mean, bloody hell. 20,000 were seized. And the British used that as a pretext for military action. And thus began the First Opium War. Yes, we had a war with China because they wouldn't buy our smack. That actually happened. That really actually fucking happened. Where did the British get their opium from back then? India, Afghanistan. Yes, India, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. What was now Pakistan? Great for growing opium. They bring it round on the boats and take it to Canton, and then they'll sell it in Canton. Anyway, so the British won the war because, look, the Qing Dynasty, I don't want to slag them off too much, but they didn't seem to have China's best interest at heart. They just made some really poor decisions, one of which was pulling back the Chinese Navy to focus on other things. It's their choice, their country. I'm not going to knock them. I just think that maybe they should have... I don't know. Things could have been different. But anyway, at the time, the British were the main naval power in the world. An accolade that's been superseded now by the Americans by a mile. But yeah, at the time, and the British won the First Opium War, and the Chinese authorities were forced to cede Hong Kong to the British, and they had to pay indemnities for the loss of trade, and also they had to promise to abide by the full resumption of the opium trade. And then, just about, 10 years later or so, it was in the 1850s, while the Qing rulers were dealing with the Taiping Rebellion, the British and the French this time, they got together and said, hey, let's occupy Beijing to sell more opium or something. And if the Chinese authorities don't like it, they can stick it, because we're the biggest drug dealers on the planet at the moment. Buy our drugs. Yay. And the British went and destroyed the Summer Palace in 1860. They destroyed the Summer Palace. Could you imagine? Could you imagine for a moment that there was a time in British history when Queen Victoria was on the throne, and a bunch of people from, let's say, Malaysia, turned up on a ship, and they manoeuvred it up the Thames, and then they pulled it over near Buckingham Palace, and they got out and started firing cannons at Buckingham Palace and burning it down and looting the place. That's effectively what we did to the Chinese. Nice. See, it's very easy when you sort of study history for GCSE or whatever to believe that Britain was always the good guys. We weren't. The Taiping Rebellion is the biggest civil war in history. That's from Percolatory. Yeah, it was insane. And again, it was used when China was having internal problems. It was used as it wasn't used as an excuse, but it was an excuse for the British to go and smash stuff up along with the French. Funny how it's omitted from history classes, says Chubai. Yeah, it is. Anyway, so look, the 19th century was known as it's not really known, but people call it the Century of Humiliation. It was difficult for the Chinese authorities and finding its place in the world at that time. And this led to the first Sino-Japanese War of 1894, in which China lost control of Korea. And ironically, for a country that had been very protectionist and tried to keep a lot of foreigners out and had done its best to not mix with people from other places and not trade and just try and keep things Chinese, the increasing influence of Western powers on China led to the Boxer Rebellion, which is basically people who just went after people who didn't look Chinese. Anyway, so this all led to the collapse of China as we know it, when the emperor died, leaving his 2-year-old son, or maybe grandson, Puyi, who became emperor at the age of 2. In 1911, the Qing Dynasty collapsed, and so did China. China collapsed into small independent states, which are called cliques, and this began the warlord period. To unify the country, the Republican movement teamed up with the communist movement to fight the warlords on a united front, and that went about as well as you can imagine, with the Republican leader Chiang Kai-shek basically massacring everyone he suspected of being a communist, who was supposed to be on the same side as him. He's supposed to be on the same side. But anyway, so this led to a brutal civil war. The communists were on the brink of annihilation. And just before then, the Japanese had taken advantage of the instability in 1932, and they had annexed the Manchurian cliques. So cliques that were in Manchuria, they took them. In 1934, Mao Zedong and the communists, they retreated, and thus began the Long March, which led them to walk about 6,000 miles, I think, over the course of a year, picking up supporters along the way. But then, weirdly, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, teamed up with the Republicans and Chiang Kai-shek, who had just been trying to bloody kill them all just a few years earlier. They teamed up again to fight against the Japanese and their invasion of Manchuria. Bloody hell. Anyway, so this was the United Second Front, and it was unsuccessful. And in 1937, China was invaded proper by Japan, and it was the second Sino-Japanese War, and arguably the start of World War II, and it was an absolute fucking bloodbath. It was about as horrific as it gets. I'll tell you a little story here about just how bad it was. So they had the second highest casualties of the Second World War after China, after Russia in China. The badly led armies of China were no match for Japan's ruthless and very well organized army. And there was a lot of incompetence on the Chinese side. The most horrific incidents of absolute chronic incompetence was when 500,000 Chinese people were drowned in a single day by the Chinese authorities when they flooded. They allowed the Yellow River to flood. They flooded the valley to stop the Japanese advance. And they didn't get the people out of the valley before they did that. Yeah, this is what they were dealing with. Anyway, Shanghai put up one hell of a fight. It was under siege for 3 months in 1938. And then the Republican army retreated to Nanking at the time, or Nanjing, but I'm going to say Nanking. It's now known as Nanjing. Nanjiang it's known as now, but let's just say Nanking, because that's how we called it then. They retreated to the old capital of Nanking. And as the Japanese thundered towards them, leaving just absolute annihilation in their wake, they just killed everything that fucking moved on the way from Shanghai to Nanking. Chiang Kai-shek, sorry, get his name right. Chiang Kai-shek. Oh, dying on stage. Chiang Kai-shek legged it. He was the leader of the Republicans, of the Kuomintang, who were the Republicans against the communists, and he legged it and left a skeleton crew of troops to hold Nanking at all costs. It fell on the 13th of December, 1938, and this led to what's known as the Rape of Nanking. It is pretty horrific, so content warning, okay? Trigger warning right now, okay? This is really fucked up. So maybe just wait till I do this and then you can come back, okay? Just mute me for just a couple of minutes. Tens of thousands of Chinese women were raped, gang raped by Japanese soldiers. Many of them were killed afterwards or killed themselves. If any men or children tried to stop the rape from happening, they would be killed. They would be shot dead. There was a competition between two officers, I think, of the Japanese army to see who could behead the most people. Who could behead 100 people the fastest. There were instances of people having to dig a trench and then they were beheaded and thrown in the trench, and then the people behind them stepped into their place and they were beheaded. It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. All told, at least 260,000 men, women, and children, including babies, were murdered by the Japanese troops. This is something that Japan still hasn't properly apologized for. It's barely acknowledged that this happened, but it did happen. There were photos, and they're fucking horrific. And I really can't I can't stress enough: do not go looking for them. You'll get PTSD. Just don't do it. The situation was so bad that the Nazi ambassador, the Nazi ambassador objected to what was happening. And he had set up an exclusion zone in the middle of the city where people could be safe. He was the Oscar Schindler of Nan King, and he was a freaking Nazi. And he said, this is a bit much. This is a bit... Jesus Christ. Yeah, there's a movie about it with Christian Bale. It came out in 2011, I think. But it's just... Yeah. And to this day, Chinese-Japanese relations have never really been particularly great. And this is one of the reasons. This is the main reason for it. Because the Japanese are so freaking proud or whatever. I don't know what's going on in the heads of the leaders of Japan, but they just won't admit this. This whole thing was... It didn't exist in the history books that were being taught in Japanese schools in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I don't even think it's in there now. You know, early on after the war, the fact that there was a war and that Japan lost it, that was omitted from the school books as well. Baby steps, I guess. And this is why when you see these absolute meatheads in the south of the USA banning books that tell history, and you're like, what the fuck? If you don't learn from history, you're condemned to repeat it. And the fact that they're trying to ban the graphic novel Mouse, anyone who's read the graphic novel Mouse will know how fantastic it is. It tells the story of the Holocaust through the eyes of mice, and the Nazis are cats. And it's harrowing but absolutely amazing. And they're trying to ban it. They're trying to ban it in America from schools because I don't know. I don't know what's going through their freaking head. Anyway, so that's just one incident of what happened during the Japanese occupation of China, which lasted until 1945, lasted until the end of the war. After the war, the Communist Party, which had still been operating in China, the Chinese Communist Party, whereas the Republicans, the Kuomintang had been sort of hiding away a little bit. The CCP had been working in local communities behind enemy lines effectively. And by the end of the war, a lot more people in China wanted the PCC to be in charge rather than the Kuomintang, the Republicans. So this led to the Kuomintang government and the army and a shitload of money, like the nation's riches, all absconding to what is now Taiwan. Yes, this is the interesting thing about Taiwan. They call themselves the Republic of China, as they did before 1949 when they fled. The what used to be the Republic of China, which is the mainland, should we say, is now the People's Republic of China. So that's the PROC. And when you go to Taiwan, you get a stamp in your passport saying ROC. When you go to China, you get a stamp in your passport saying PROC. It's quite confusing. The Taiwanese government have a claim or stake a claim to the rest of China. The Chinese government stake a claim to Taiwan. This is a bit of a problem, and it means that there's been a lot of it's difficult. This video would never get out there in China because I've mentioned Taiwan. There's 3 T's that you can't mention when you're traveling through China: Taiwan, Tiananmen, and Tibet. Just don't do it. Who needs history books when you got statues, right? Says Pineapple Boy. Yeah, well, something very interesting that came out from something that Cummings said is that Boris Johnson is obsessed with building stuff. He wants to put his name on things. And I think the reason why he's gone in so hard, apart from the whole culture war bullshit, he's gone in so hard, like, protecting statues, we've got to protect statues. It's so if anyone's mad enough to make a statue of Boris Johnson, it's protected by law that he's put in to protect his own statue of himself from being beheaded by just the next person who walked along with a baseball bat. True story. Anyway, so so the People's Republic of China began in 1949, so 73 years ago, and it began completely bankrupt because the Kuomintang government had taken all the money. And also, they've just been through a war, I mean, and a civil war between the Kuomintang and the CCP. But by 1953, so about 4 years later, the inflation was under control. And the guy in charge was a guy called Chairman Mao, who's also on the money. Hello, Chairman Mao. I used to have a watch. It was really cool, and I lost it when I was traveling. And it was Chairman Mao, and he would wave. His hand would wave every second. That's what would happen. Indeed. Unlike modern Germany, modern Japan have never apologised for its war record, says David Faulkner. Yeah, indeed. Anyway, so Chairman Mao, absolute fucking nutter. What can I say? Like many megalomaniacs, like many these absolute lunatics, he was both stupid, angry, bloodthirsty, and incompetent, which seems to be the rule for these kind of people. He started really messing up in 1957. Well, messing up, I mean, he probably wanted to do this, but in 1957, he began a thing where he wanted to let 100 flowers bloom. So he decided to loosen up some of the censorship rules about what you could say and what you could do, and he invited various thinkers and intellectuals to say what they really thought about this fairly new, at the time, communist regime that had been around for 8 years, really, for the whole of China. And they didn't hold back. They said, this is a bit shit. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to fix it and make it better. Which led to 300,000 rightists being outed, and many of them being put in camps, prisons, and some of them just executed. That was nice. Ideology and incompetence. That's how I like to remember Chairman Mao. He was responsible for the Great Leap Forward, in which he got he abolished money, yes, and private property. Yeah. And that went as well as you can imagine. It went really fucking shit because people didn't have money to buy stuff with. And not everyone has all the means to make the stuff that they need to stay alive without being able to have some form of thing to give to someone and say, hey, can I have that thing that you've got that I don't have? I've worked doing something else, but I can't eat steel. But Chairman Mao, because he was a dickhead, thought, oh yeah, you can eat steel. And so he decided to make all these little villages around China have steel quotas. Yeah, rather than, I don't know, just help them have food, which would be nice, but no, steel quotas. We'll have steel quotas. So all these little villages were like melting down their pots and pans to fulfill their steel quotas. They weren't working in the field, and also there was a famine in what was it, the end of the 50s, wasn't it? Or was it the beginning of the 60s? Anyway, so there was crop failures, which compounded the problem. But by some accounts, the number of people who starved to death when Mao abolished money like a big, massive dickhead. Some of the figures are as high as 60 million people. 60 million people. That's more than the population of England. Dead. Everyone dead. Everyone you know dead. Everyone you've ever known dead. Everyone you've ever met dead. That is absolutely fucking insane. Anyway, so after that, people thought, well, he's not very good, is he? So he had to sort of step down as supreme leader. He was still the leader of the Communist Party, and he was still kind of in charge. But then he did what all great horrible twats do, and he decided to invest in a personality cult. So he put out this little red book, and he got all of his... He got people to pick up his... And he built this personality cult around him and his little red book. And this led to the Cultural Revolution, in which people, self-appointed people, calling themselves the Red Guard, went around declaring people who didn't like Chairman Mao, as evil people. Go on, why don't you F off and join the Tories? Only it was a bit more messed up than that, and it actually led to the execution of thousands of intellectuals, writers, artists. Temples were ransacked, publications ceased, books were burnt, musical instruments were burned. It was absolutely horrific. Historical artifacts, priceless historical artifacts. Priceless Chinese historical artifacts destroyed by these absolute nutters, these culties who see someone charismatic and go, oh, there's a picture of him, I love him. Oh, let's sing a song about him. I know a good song. Dickheads. Anyway, so, yeah, not great. Meanwhile, China and the USSR, you would think they were busy buddies, almost got the same flag, etc. But no, unhappy allies, putting it mildly. And that was compounded by, in 1971, the United States telling Taiwan to get the hell out of the seat at the UN. Go on, get out that seat, you. That's not for you. And putting the Chinese in the seat. Because they were like, well, we're the Republic of China. Well, we're the People's Republic of China. And the United States moved for a vote to be taken. This was in October 1971 to expel the representatives of Chiang Kai-shek. And when I do an episode on Taiwan, you'll find out that he was not a very good leader, and for a long time, the Taiwanese really, really suffered under his leadership, and it wasn't until he carked it that they really stepped out of the darkness. But yes, it was said that they were unlawfully occupying the United Nations seat that was meant for China. And then only a few months later, in February of 1972, Richard Milhouse Nixon came to visit for a week in China. In 1976, September the 9th, Mao Zedong, Chairman Mao, he carked it of Lou Gehrig disease. I didn't know this until I started doing a bit of research about China, but he died of motor neuron disease, the same thing that Stephen Hawking had. Yeah. Anyway, so Deng Xiaoping was his successor, and he was also one of on and off. He was friends, comrades, housemates. I don't know, with Chairman Mao. At one point, he was outed as one of the main rightists of during the Cultural Revolution. But he came back and he got into power. Under his leadership, he wanted to bring in the 4 modernizations, which were agriculture, industry, science, and technology. And China became more outward-looking, and it had became this weird mix of communism and capitalism, but still very authoritarianism. Although still very authoritarian, leading to the horrific events of 1989. Now, we all remember 1989 for being the year that the Berlin Wall came down, but a few months before the Berlin Wall came down, as you know, the winds of change were blowing, students took to Tiananmen Square. Over 100,000 students took to Tiananmen Square to protest for what they wanted, for what they called the 5th modernization, which was democracy. The authorities came down like a fucking hammer on them. Hundreds, if not thousands, of the protesters were killed in the square. They rolled tanks into the square. Tanks. And you remember that famous image of the guy, the footage of the guy with the shopping who's standing defiantly in front of the tank. And I think about this sometimes. I think, bloody hell, if only that had happened the following year, the people who wanted a democracy, it might have worked, because by then the Berlin Wall had come down, the Soviet Union was on its arse, and maybe the leaders in China will be like, well, we could stay in power in a democracy. It's pretty easy to rig a democracy. Let's stay in power, but give people a vote or something. I don't know, but they didn't go down that route. So now you have modern China, which is it's got a very liberal economy, but it's heavily authoritarian. Iris Chang published in the 90s an influential study of the rape of Nan King. Iris Chang, her book, if you can stomach it, it's well worth reading. And agents saying that she committed suicide in 2004. I didn't know that, but that doesn't surprise me, having to find out what, just live with those images of what went on in that disgusting part of human history. Percolatori said, I especially love Mao's plan to increase steel production. Indeed. Let's make steel in places that have no steel. Yeah, made a lot of sense. Percolatori, he sold agricultural products to other communist bloc countries. Sadly, the production figures were falsified, so tens of millions of people starved. Also, he sold the stuff so he could finance a nuclear bomb project faster. Well, I was going to mention that when I said that he fell out with the USSR. One of the big bones of contention between China and the USSR was that the USSR, they wanted the Soviets to share the secrets of the atomic bomb, and the Soviets said, that not for you. Thankfully, because Chairman Mao was a freaking nutter. Not that Stalin wasn't a nutter, but you know what I mean. Chubai, they declared war on sparrows because they ate grain, but they also ate insects that attacked the crops, so the crops failed. It's mad, isn't it? It's just, there's so much to it as well. I mean, I've gone way over time, already half an hour over time. Pagatory says, also, Chinese agricultural policy was influenced by this lovely chap called Trofim Lysenko. Check him out on Wikipedia. And I will do that. And Lee says, I think it might have been clamped down harder the year after once the CCP saw what was happening in the USSR. And Chubai said, well, okay, yeah, maybe. I don't know. No, we'll never know. We'll never know. But yeah, maybe they might have clamped down on it harder. They clamped down on it pretty fucking hard though, man. Chubai says, I was on a bus to London to go to the EU march, explaining it to some Chinese students. I said, it's like Tiananmen Square without the tanks. I don't think they knew what I was on about. Yeah, indeed. Well, that's the thing. Tiananmen's not taught at all in China. You don't really learn about it. And also, I'm going to come on to. So China today, it's got a permanent seat on the Security Council of the UN, which it uses to obstruct anything that we want to do when we want to, I don't know, tell Sudan to stop murdering people in Darfur. China will say, no, we don't care, which is great. So we have a Security Council, and we've got 5 permanent members on the Security Council, and then some that change. And the 5 are the UK, great, France, USA, Russia, oh, Jesus, and China. So anything that's seen as anti-capitalism, like, I don't know, green policies, is shot down in flames by the US. Anything that's seen as pro-democracy is shot down in flames by the Chinese. And anything that's deemed pro... what do the Russians object to? Oh, absolutely everything. Is anything that's deemed anti-corruption? No, anything that's deemed anti-corruption. Obviously, the Russians say, we don't want to stop corruption. That's how we make all our money. So they don't actually speak like that, but you know. Anyway, so permanent seats on the UN, China. Also, the Great Firewall of China. 10% of all websites are not available in China, including YouTube, and I don't think they can use the Google search engine. I think Yahoo Mail you could use, but the only reason why they could use Yahoo is because Yahoo gave over to the Chinese authorities the names of people who had said mean things about the authorities on the internet. Thanks for that, Yahoo. And even though you don't really hear much about Yahoo these days, I think they've got a big stake in the Alibaba, which is the big trading site in China. It's absolutely huge. And so they've got enough money. So, they had the Olympics in 2008. They've got the Olympics now, actually, in Beijing again, but now it's the Winter Olympics. It was the Summer Olympics in 2008. Now in 2022, it's the Winter Olympics that are just about to be held over there. Whereas old sort of China kept to itself, new China is expanding and influencing and developing and investing in many different countries, especially in Africa. There's a lot of Chinese influence in Africa at the moment. They're building a railway in Kenya. They're also very heavily involved in the coltan mining industry in Democratic Republic of Congo. And it's not unusual to see quite a few Chinese people walking around when you're in any of the big cities in Africa. Not to say there's not Europeans there as well, and Indian people as well, but it's noticeable that there's quite a few Chinese people. China now with their Belt and Road Initiative, which is about making trade faster from east to west, they are really going hell-bent for leather to try and get this show on the road, let's say. However, the current leader, Xi Jinping, looks like Winnie the Pooh, and he hates being told that he looks like Winnie the Pooh. And China is facing a lot of huge environmental issues at the moment. There's coal, the biggest user of coal and the biggest producer of coal in the world. They also are dealing with incredible bad smog in a lot of the cities, most notably Beijing. They cut down millions of trees every year to make fucking chopsticks, and that's not to talk about the animals that suffer and die in China, and as a result of Chinese herbal medicine and the Chinese insatiable appetite for eating things that are made of food. Can I eat that? No, you possibly shouldn't. It's really endangered. Yeah, but it's made of food. If God didn't want me to eat it, he wouldn't have made it out of food, right? Yeah. And that's not to say, I haven't even mentioned the plight of the Uyghurs, who are ethnically Muslim people, ethnically Turkish, not Turkish, but ethnically Turkmen people of the northwest of China, in Xinjiang province. What's happening up there is horrific, and the countries of the world need to get together and say, "Oi, China, stop doing that." Now, when we were in the EU, that was something that we would have a bit of muscle on, because there's no military powers these days. Military powers don't really mean as what they used to. Economic power is what matters. So if the US and the EU said to China, "We're not going to buy any of your stuff until you stop being horrible to the Uyghurs," China will go, "Okay, then we'll stop being horrible to the Uyghurs." They would do, because they want to sell us stuff. We had them over a barrel in that matter. But Britain alone saying, "Hey, China, we're not going to buy your stuff if you don't stop being crazy bastards and killing Uyghur people and putting them in camps and murdering them." And they'll go, "Oh, okay." Jeremy Goff says, £5, I owe you. What? China limits the number of foreign films allowed to be shown, so you tend to see Chinese actors and positive reviews of China in films to increase the chances that will get approved by Chinese censors. Yes, that's very true. They'll have a scene where Batman goes to China for no particular reason. They're going to pick someone up. Like, why has he gone to China? Why? Yeah. Hard to make fun of Chi when we got a blonde bumbling clown. Hey, Pineapple Boy. Gotta say, though, you know, just because we've got an idiot in charge doesn't mean I can't slag off someone else's country for having a idiot in charge of their country as well. I do it all the time for America when it was under Trump, and also Brazil and the Philippines and Turkey and Hungary and... Oh, go on. Who thinks the Tories give a flying monkey fart about the Uyghurs? No one. Absolutely no one. Anyway, so the economic miracle, which has seen China's economy grow at incredible rates, but don't forget it was starting from bugger all. So I keep saying this about people talk about growth rates. They love talking about growth rates. You talk to a Brexiteer, they'll go, "Oh, the growth rate of Bhutan is 11%. And you're like, "Well done, Bhutan. It was 11%. Yay, but you started with very little. So obviously it's going to be... If the American economy grows by 1.5%, the actual amount that it grows by is a lot more than, in terms of how much money it is, than a country in sub-Saharan Africa that's grown 50%, starting from a very low base. But it looks like the economic miracle might be unraveling. There's a huge problem at the moment with this Evergrande. This is a property giant in China. And its liabilities exceed over $300 billion. Yeah. So that's creating a bit of problems in China at the moment. And it's we'll have to just see what happens. And obviously with COVID and everything, which originated in China. Thanks for that, China. Please stop having wet markets. But yeah, there's the fact that this global pandemic that we've all been living under for 2 years, it feels a bit bad to say, well, that's probably the fault of China. It could have originated anywhere. A lot of epidemiologists say, well, look, you're always going to have a pandemic at some point. It's inevitable. You can't just keep on going without something mutating at some point, some virus mutating and humans picking it up. We saw it with bird flu and swine flu and with SARS. And these things happen. These things happen. And coronavirus is just the latest version of it. But I think China could do a bit more in terms of not having wet markets. Let's just clean things up, bit of hygiene, and maybe like my experiences in China where I say I can really smell the drains. Maybe that's something to do with the fact that maybe they should be a bit better when it comes to hygiene. I don't know. In general, I don't mean like personal hygiene. I just mean the way things are put together. Good night, Graham, says my mum. Good night, mum. Biggest polluter and biggest reforestation effort, biggest everything, said number 3. Well, yeah, the amount of high-speed rail they've put in, it's just absolutely incredible. And obviously that's green travel because that's all electric. It's all electric. It's not diesel. He's like, I'm going to go to China and say, yeah, we just use a mix of like diesel trains and stuff. They'd be like, what? What? Why would you do that? Okay, so now for your viewing pleasure, because I'm nice. I know I'm way over time. And if you want to leave it at that, then, you know, that's fine. I won't hold it against you. But I will be back on Sunday, I hope, for Film Club, which will be on my Graham Hughes Films channel. And obviously, I've still got loads of work to do on these channels, and I'm still putting together the new Discord server, and I haven't invited the people who are my YouTube members to the new channel yet, so I've got to do that. I'll do that tomorrow, but I'm not going to go over there now, because if I do, then it's a bit unfair on the people who haven't been invited yet. So I'm not going to go over there. I'll go over there on Sunday. But yeah, in the meantime, if you want to use it and you are a patron and you've got the link, by all means, head over there and make fun of things that are going on in the UK at the moment. Not least the fact that 4 of Boris Johnson's closest advisors and people like that have all left today. Panel Boy says, ban bats in the food and medicine trades. They're absolutely full of viruses. That's true. That is absolutely true. So, all in all, China, it is an immense country with an immense history and beautiful old architecture and the distinctive style. It's a cliche, but it is like nowhere else on earth. It's an amazing country, and geographically it's fascinating as well. It's built on the steps going up to the Himalayas, and technically speaking, you know, the highest mountain in the air on the planet, Mount Everest, all 8,848 meters of it, half of that is in China. And yeah, one of my adventures, I actually took the train from Lhasa, from the capital of Tibet, down to Beijing, and it was a new train. I mean, I think it had only been running for 2 years by the time I got on it, so it's pretty impressive. And it went over permafrost. Amazing. So if you want to pick up where we left off on Sunday, please do. If Boris Johnson resigns in the next couple of days, then I will be doing a video, obviously. Got to do that. Lee Corn says, I've heard that all their coal-fired plants are designed to be retrofitted with next-gen nuclear. I'm not sure if that's true or not. Well, I don't see why not, because I think the process for making energy from coal, which is that you burn the coal, you heat water, the water makes steam, and the steam drives a turbine, is very similar to how you make nuclear power, which is using nuclear material to heat water, and then the water turns a turbine. The steam turns a turbine. So yeah, could be work. Could work. At least the Chinese are looking at thorium. I hope it works. Well, we're running out of time if it doesn't. Anyway, so now for your viewing pleasure, I'm going to just go through some old videos of mine. Okay, so otherwise, bye-bye. And if you want to stay with me and watch some home videos of me in China, not particularly home videos, I guess, if I'm in China. But yeah, I first went to China in 2002. I traveled up from Vietnam into Hong Kong. And then I returned in 2006. I went to Shanghai. And then in 2010, I traveled through from Tibet to Beijing, went over to Chengdu, and from there I got the ferry over to South Korea, and then back, and then I went down the coast, went to Shanghai, went to the Shanghai Expo of 2030, we're not there yet, of 2010, and then I went over to Taiwan and came back, and then I headed down all the way to Vietnam, and then I came back on a cargo ship in 2012 to Hong Kong and travelled from Hong Kong, spent a couple of weeks in Hong Kong, and then I travelled across from Hong Kong to Guangzhou. I was there for one of my friends had just given birth, so I got to meet the baby, which was nice, and then headed down to the border with Laos, so crossed over into Laos from China. So yeah, that'll be my trips to China. Oh, I also went to Mongolia from China. I went up from Beijing, went to the Great Wall of China. So here's some of my footage. This is from 2010. I've got footage from every single one of my trips, but obviously it's not edited and I haven't put it together yet. So we're just going to rattle through it really quickly. I've got 4 videos here. If they're any good, I'll give you the money myself. No, that's the wrong thing, isn't it? So basically, I want to just press play on that. Wow, I've received 100 messages. Okay, and I will do this, and we will do this. Okay, right. Let's go.
It's all very interesting.
Waiting for anybody? We're waiting for Graham.
Thank you. Are we going? Is this for where we've just been, or is this another place?
This is Tibet.
Souvenir for you.
Okay. Souvenir. Baiju Temple.
So we go to the Stupa?
Yeah? We go to the Stupa? Okay. Do you want to hold that for a moment?
Hey, it's me. Hello.
So far from Buddhism, I've learned...
Flashing at me.
It doesn't matter. You don't pray like this. You pray like this. You've got to leave a gap in your hand.
There you go.
It's
So
very
me
important.
learning things about...
Oh, and also,
Why is that great?
yak butter. Because you've got to hold something in your hand.
Immortality?
You've got to hold immortality in your hand. So none of this. You don't put your palms together. It's like this. And when you win your argument, you go like this. I'll do that again. When you win your argument, you go like this.
Okay. So that was
Camera holder.
after I've been to
Now, a
Tibetan
stupa
monastery.
is like a large sort of temple type thing, but I think what sets a stupa apart from a temple is that you can't actually go inside a stupa. But this one seems to have a house in it, so I might be wrong.
It's happened before.
Also here is 3 sects, right?
So this is my
Galupa or
guide when I
Satya or
was in
Poten.
Taiwan. They don't really let you.
What's
Taiwan,
the difference
sorry,
between a
Tibet.
stupa and a temple?
This is not same. Temple is monk. They are coming to teaching,
Yeah.
praying, right? Stupa is also only in their statues. There are only 2 monk. There are one by one devotee.
Okay, so this isn't for praying here at the stupa.
Stupa, yeah.
What's it for then? If it's not for the monks,
Not for the monk.
it's not for
This
the monk.
is for the statue.
The statue.
Statue.
What's that? Oh, statue. Okay.
It's for the statue to
So
live
there's a statue inside.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we call the
in. There you go. There's a statue. That's a statue's house. Okay, let's move on. Oh, I got some great One of the things I found quite surprising in the temples was just how much money was like in the temples.
So
There's some prayer wheels.
there's some Buddhist prayer wheels here.
Got 10 them, Graham.
And a little bit of a
Oh my God,
spin.
It's probably sacrilegious to spin them. You're supposed to see prayers while you're spinning them, Graham.
apparently there are 77
Worst
chapels
ginger
in
ever.
here in this one stupa.
To pray. Mongolia and pray there. But here
Female.
Right.
7. We've got any light your ass.
This
This is
me
the incarnation of
temples.
concubines and a Buddha that's a bit lit. It's a very
There's a
kick your
light
ass.
with you, Graham. Why don't you have a light? Get a video light. God damn it.
My head. Come out.
Oh, back when I had hair.
There's another one.
Okay, right, boring. Get on with it. Sorry, I'm just flicking ahead.
Buddha. An Angus Buddha. Tibet, come with me to Tibet. Come with me.
Right. Oh, there you go.
Oh, where does glorious sunshine come from?
Hello.
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 No.
In the mountains.
Got them and got a little bit bored. Cool. Very nice colour, sort of maroon. I like that.
I think Tobin at the back of the V60 tank. So I was in a group, just not allowed to really travel solo from Nepal into Tibet. So we had to be part of a group of them. Just kind of left to our own devices.
We're going to be heading over.
To Lhasa.
So this pass we're on is 4,200 meters above sea level, which is higher than most continental mountains. It's higher than Mont Blanc, it's higher than Mount Kosciuszko, it's higher than Mount Kinabalu. It's not as high as your man, what's it called, Kilimanjaro. It's nearly 6,000 meters. Big ponds. Apparently it comes to...
Terrible boy. Glacier. It's probably not anymore.
A bit
Warming.
It's okay. It's really beautiful. World! My pogo stick.
So I'm just skipping forwards because this is not Drossing era. It's just
Right.
talking bollocks. Oh look.
Are we getting scarves? I want a scarf. Oh, hello. Hello. Oh, I got a scarf. Thank you. Oh, got myself
I got that scarf.
a month in Southeast Asia. Is this what you expected of Lhasa, the capital of Tibet?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Although it's cleaner than I thought it would be.
Alright, now I'm officially confused. We're in the market in the middle of Lhasa, which I assumed was a Buddhist place. But everyone here seems to be Muslim. See? Muslims. What's your opinion about Nepalese girls?
Very beautiful, but I'm afraid they might all be deaf and dumb.
Oh, right, okay. That's no good.
Okay.
English?
You can get size 15 shoes.
No. Not unless you are a clown. I don't think...
You want one?
Aimlessly at the moment. It's always fun. How are you finding walking around aimlessly, Tobin?
I feel lost.
So we have been told.
Oh, this is the streets of Lhasa.
So, I mean, is this a lot more sort of action and noise than you're expecting here in Lhasa? I mean, were you expecting like flying monks on clouds?
Oh, sorry.
Little antique shop.
Right, stop the video. Oh, this is on the train.
I have.
Oh!
Ah!
Oh! 3 in a row!
I think he wins the game, mate.
No.
So we were like on
I
this
have
train for 2
reflexes
days, traveling from Lhasa to
Chinese
to,
man.
Beijing. And, yeah, we spent most of the time playing cards. with
cards.
the guys on the train. Is this Snap? What are we playing? Can't be Snap. Yeah, it's Snap.
Oh!
Yes. You got it.
Before he did it! He's patient. He'll learn.
The cards. Always have a pack of cards. China. Yeah,
Do you know which province we're in at the moment? Which province we're in at the moment? Can I just point out that my GPS doesn't seem to have picked up a signal since I got on this train?
Oh yeah, this is a
I don't know what it is about the train interfering with the GPS signal, but
GPS
it's not.
travels around the world. From Lhasa to Beijing.
Lanzhou. We're in Lanzhou.
Lanzhou. Okay. We're in Lanzhou, which is out here. Look. Hello. Hello.
This is where they live.
Oh, okay. This is where you all live. You all. They get no. Sleep tonight. So have I. In India or in America on a Greyhound. Miss a go.
To me.
Sorry, it's annoying. I'm just skipping.
Always good.
Skip it.
Dribble out. On the Lhasa to Beijing, 5,000 meters above sea level. I'm staying with a guy. I'm couch surfing with a guy called Carl in Beijing. Then I'll be heading to Japan. Then I'll be heading from Japan back into China, back to Shanghai. And then I'll be heading down the coast to near Hong Kong. And from there I'll be able to get a ferry over to a Taiwanese island. Not Taiwan proper, Formosa, as it was an old money.
Be choosers. Taking this trip.
Like 15. Well, I tried to get a drink, you know. I don't know what means I'll be able to lie all across here, which will be quite comfortable. Last night I had to sleep sitting up like this, and these seats don't recline. So it's a bit of an Easter egg hunt because I don't know where it is.
2 days on the seat.
Beijing. All very ordered. It's all in Chinese! Look!
Yeah, try and read that back frame. Len, a little bit.
Still have absolutely nowhere. I still have. Oh my God.
So
you see, if I got my Chinese visa and then gone to Nepal and then come from Tibet, my Chinese visa would have been cancelled. So I got my Chinese visa in my other passport, got it sent to me in China. Clever, eh? Visa for tomorrow.
There you go.
Squeeze.
Passport.
Been there for about 40 minutes.
This is Beijing. This is a film in a nice bit.
Oh, that was slightly bizarre. I was honestly all of this in Perth in Australia. Woo! Dive in on that. Oh, we need to change it so we get the English subtitles because stuff. And then turning their lights off. Anyway, it's just coming up to 3 o'clock. Where's the book?
Something else.
You can't get good workmanship these days. Fucking buildings, look.
Oh, look, it's Liverpool. I really need to edit these.
Face of Mum China.
It's the 6-person organizing committee of tonight's. Some of the
Might be a divorce party.
Right, it's the middle of the night. It's Saturday night. I'm heading off to the bus station. I'm tremendously. So I don't know. So there's 6 people.
I think this is. I went to Mongolia. Oh, what? This is interesting. Bad. This is the bus. Feet.
Definitely one of the comfiest overnight bus rides I've ever. Alright, please helping me.
Thank you, good man.
Before I can go. Give me some jacket.
Which is great.
Still look like having a conversation.
Yeah, look, there's someone put dinosaurs out on the side. Dinosaur.
Unfortunately. Very cool. I just ran into Mongolia, got my passport stamped. 7 minutes before the bus is supposed to leave for Beijing. The border closes at 5, which is in half an hour, so I'm the last to cross the border. And it's all a bit of a worry. I better put my camera away, but going into this kind of this inspection.
Yeah, well, it's midnight. I kind of want to end this pretty soon.
Fine.
Skip
So
it.
this is
Skip it.
Come on, lad.
Skip it. Oh, well, that's the same that's on the way back. Also, the sound of the wind. What the hell?
To do? I want to get off here. Great warning. So I just queued up in the queue over there. South, east, west. It's just very easy to get around. You just look at the sun.
Skip to the last tape now. Got loads more than this. One day I will edit it all. That is the Great Wall of China. Maybe I should start with this tape. There you go. What do you want to know?
People who protect it. Anyway, so under Genghis Khan, the Mongols decided to invade China somewhat and pretty much destroyed Beijing before making it their own capital under Kublai Khan, who I think built some more wall, possibly to keep his unruly cousins out of the new empire that the Mongols had formed, which ran pretty much all the way from Vietnam to Hungary. It's the biggest land empire the world's ever seen. But one thing about the Mongols, they're very good at invading and smashing stuff up. They're not too good at governing. So all their little states sort of fell into princing warring states. Yeah, we like them. Anyway, look, more wall up there.
Great Wall of China.
Let's stay for a walk. Why spoil it with a wall? Oh, we get to go down for a bit before we go up again.
A bit breathy.
My name's Graham Hughes, and this is The Odyssey.
Right. Well, I think that might be enough.
Right. The Great Wall of China. Wall of China.
I should have made that my backdrop. I've got, oh yeah, that's on my picture.
From
Dealing at pexels.com.
Guai. No. Oh fuck, what's it called? Now we're going, which one are we going to? For Qing Dynasty.
India.
I hope it's open. If it's not, I'm gonna have to think of another. Over to South Korea. China. Of the Odyssey expedition, things are heating up now. Maybe by tomorrow I could have got to 169 and 170. If I go to the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea, I should be able to step one foot in North Korean soil.
Okay.
But still.
This is Qingdao.
Oh, I do like to be beside the seaside.
Which,
The pavilion.
Used to be a German place, actually. The Germans took over. It's all the German.
Now, if it didn't have a stonking great Chinese flag on the top of it, I wouldn't know this was in China. It looks so Germanic, it's ridiculous.
Well, there you go. Right, I'm going to disappear for a moment. Bye. You got good beer from this place. Good Qingdao beer. It should be obvious, really.
It's a fine example here of old Germanic blush trading, which is when you make your rocks here look like rocks. Do you see? Because it makes the building look more strong and impressive. Back in the day when we used to make strong, impressive buildings.
Okay, shut up. Right, there you go. So that's just a little bit of my footage. That was 4 tapes worth there. I know I was skipping through it. Sorry if that was annoying, but yeah, I didn't know what was. I honestly haven't watched that probably since I recorded it 12 years ago. Anyway, so yeah, Pineapple Boy saying skipping like an ADHD teenager on TikTok. Indeed. Right, I'm gonna head off now because it's way past my bedtime. Thank you very much for joining me for my bumper edition of Hughes the World, talking about China. Obviously, big country, big history, lots of people. It's a big place. And there's a lot to get through. And we've barely scratched the surface. There's so much more to talk about. I should maybe have split this into 4 different episodes. Might have been smarter thing to do. But thank you for watching. I'm going to head off now. And if you'd like to join me for Film Club on Sunday, I will see you then. Reagan Elite saying, thanks, Gray. Well, thank you for holding in and for holding on there. I think everyone else has gone to bed. And on Sunday, we'll be hopefully watching Billy Wilder's witness for the prosecution film club. So stay tuned for that. And until then, I'll say thanks so much for watching. And until next time, fair winds and following seas, traveller.